Many of us have those stubborn pounds that seem impossible to lose, no matter how good we eat or how hard we work out. My solution is PlushCare. PlushCare is a leading telehealth provider with doctors who are there for you day and night to partner with you in your weight loss journey. They can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound for those who qualify. Plus, they accept most insurance plans. To get started, visit plushcare.com/weightloss. That's plushcare.com/weightloss.
Conservative. Constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, the Fayette Circuit Court has issued a ruling on my Brood coffee shop case. Some of you may remember this Lexington coffee shop Brood. We stayed open during the second round of lockdowns, and the state has lashed out with us. Well, we had a ruling on that in circuit court here in Fayette County, so we'll go into that. And this also ties into some things we've been seeing at the national level on the COVID side of things, so it certainly bears discussion. Adam Moore, the Democrat running in the 45th House District, is really mad at me because, like all people that are in a cult, he doesn't like that his fringe religious beliefs, which are, to be clear, of being able to manifest his reality to be whatever he wants. Well, at least this is the church he goes to says this. He's claiming these are not his religious beliefs. He just attends church there every Sunday and stands up and does readings from textbooks, not scripture, but from textbooks that they worship there, that they use as their religious texts. Okay, but he's claiming that no, that's not a cult. I'm not a part of that cult. Yeah, do I play in the band there? Yeah. It looks like he plays the drums. Do I stand up in the middle of quote-unquote service and read from some sort of scripture that isn't the Bible? Yeah. Do we gather there every Sunday? Yep. But, it isn't a cult, though. He swears it isn't a cult, and he doesn't like his fringe religious beliefs. And what according to their website, they do believe is that they can become in tuned with the universal mind. And then by using affirmative prayer, they're able to manifest their reality to be whatever they want it to be. And all of this is taught by one Reverend Rainbow, pronoun she, her. No, he didn't like me calling that a cult. And so his campaign has issued a press release where he digs the hole even deeper by confirming everything I've said while calling me a liar, and then compares Republicans to the Taliban. We should have all that and more today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. But first, I have really done it this time. I've really messed up, y'all. I have managed to anger not just the left, but darn near everyone by reminding them the act of giving birth to a child is physically different for both a man and a woman. Those of you who listen to the show know that yesterday I briefly touched on the fact that Fayette County Public Schools was offering a 7 weeks maternity leave to their teachers. From a recruiting side of things, I don't think the benefit itself is super helpful. And I know a lot of you hearing that will be like, what are you talking about? It's super helpful. Think about this, okay? Put yourself in the mindset of a person, a young mom or young dad, especially too, young male, right? But a young woman even who isn't pregnant and doesn't know when they're going to become pregnant because they're just coming out of college, let's say, or whatever, and they're getting a job in teaching and they're trying to decide where they're going to put down roots, where they're going to teach at. Would they rather, okay, you got 2 jobs before you to choose from. They have the exact same benefits, but one pays $52,000 a year, and the other one pays $50,000 a year, but the one paying $50,000 a year offers 7 weeks of paid maternity leave. And if we're honest with ourselves, we know they're going to pick them more money now because that's something they can grasp onto. People don't typically think too hard about their futures. Same thing when it comes to like retirement, for example. If you offered them, hey, I can offer you a 7% match on your 401k, or I can just pay you 7% more now, or even 5% more now, a vast majority of people are going to choose 5% more now. That's just how they work. So from a sheer just, if we're trying to use this to recruit in new teachers and fulfill some sort of teacher loss we have, the maternity leave thing doesn't make a lot of sense. But another point that I made about it was that I do not believe a woman who physically gives birth and a quote-unquote non-birthing parent, that's what they called it, or an adopted parent should receive the same amount of time. I'm not going to sit here and claim the amount of maternity leave they should get or not get. I have my opinions on it, and I find it's probably shorter than most. And by should, I mean an employer should have that decision if they want to offer it or not. Employers should have the ability not to offer it, because as I just laid out, an employer may want to offer to just pay everybody more, but not offer maternity leave. And more people may want to work for them under that situation than they want to work for somebody who has to provide maternity leave. But instead they decide not to do that. That should be an option they have. I think we should all be able to agree on that. But if they do decide to have maternity leave, I've just said that a mother who physically gives birth and someone who didn't should never be given the same amount of maternity leave. Now, it's important we understand here. Now, this upset a lot of people. You know, people come in and say, I agree with you on most things, but you got this one wrong. Both equally important. They need to bond with their children. Adopted parents need time to bond with their children as well. And all these things, which I agree with literally everything they've had to say. That parents both need to bond with their kid. I agree. And adopted parents need a chance to bond with their children. Agree with that. Here's my point, though. There is in no way, shape, or form that a mother who physically has to give birth is going through the same thing as all those other categories when it comes to their physical, actual body. And what is maternity leave? Remember, I said the same amount of maternity leave. Maternity leave is time given to a parent before or after birthing a child or surrounding the birth of a child. What does, outside of bad planning, so you ran out of time to do things like build the crib and paint the wall, if it's a pretty standard normal pregnancy, what does a man leading up to the day of birth need time off for? Outside doctor's appointments, those kinds of things, obviously here or there, but I'm saying need like a week or two off at a time for. I have a son. I've been through this, okay? Doesn't need a whole lot of time. However, a woman carrying around extra poundage right there in front, pretty uncomfortable, bladder issues going on, all kinds of different physical ailments going on with them leading up till birth, might want to take a week or two off beforehand. And they should be able to do that if you're going to offer maternity leave. If you're going to offer that, they should have that choice and decision. And so to pretend like the actual birthing of a child is the same for both a man and a woman is false. And pretending that a person who's adopting kids and a woman physically giving birth and a woman who's adopting a child are going through the same thing is physically false. You know it's not accurate. A woman needs more time off beforehand if she could choose to take it. But she has more of a reason to take off time beforehand. And time afterwards, there's physical recuperation time from the actual physical thing they just went through of having a child. But I can't say that apparently without being a man-hater. For pointing out the physical reality that women go through physical damage to their bodies when giving birth to children. Apparently is the unsayable now. I didn't get the memo. I don't know if you got the memo. It makes me wonder what other physically true things there are that we're not allowed to say anymore. We're not allowed to acknowledge that a man and woman, when it comes to birth, are going through different things, which is the reality thing. And I thought too, and this is coming from conservatives too, I thought we all agreed that there is a difference, physical difference between man and a woman. And one of the greatest things about being a woman, and one of the things we should celebrate the most, is the fact that they can go through the miracle of childbirth. Not only that, but let's say you do believe they deserve equal amount of time afterwards. Well, in order for a mother to have the equal amount of time after birth to bond with their child after birth as a male working at the same company, she would have to work until the moment she gives birth. She's not allowed to take off a week or two beforehand. That would be what you'd believe in this case. And I just think that's wrong. But apparently that's the unsayable. So I apologize to all of you who are hurt by my hurtful words of acknowledging that men and women are going through different things when it comes to childbirth, that a woman who's adopting a child versus a woman giving birth to a child are going through different things that deserve different amounts of time off. I'm sorry I acknowledged it. I'll make sure in the future I'll keep those kinds of things to myself. Well, coming up after this, Faith Circuit Court has made a ruling. We see all kinds of COVID things in the headlines. What's that going on? What's going on here in Kentucky? We'll have that after this short break. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And so for those of you paying attention at the national level, you've seen quite a lot of things going on with COVID. I thought about going through and just like playing some of these again, some of the crazy things going on when it comes to COVID. Because obviously we've seen Fauci making a lot of statements. So I thought about playing out what Fauci's statements are, but I think a lot of you probably heard them already on different shows and heard them on Facebook and Twitter. But suffice it to say, Fauci's just admitting that he just like made it all up, which is exactly what we all thought was going on. That he just kind of made it all up. When asked about the 6-foot distancing rule, he's like, I don't know. It just kind of appeared one day. And then he was asked to clarify those statements, and he said, what I meant is that I never saw like a study to actually support that number. As if that justifies just making it up, right? And he goes on, of course, he talks about the COVID vaccine, how everything they said about it wasn't true, and they knew it from the beginning, but, you know, whatever. They swear, though, they didn't. I mean, gaslighting central. I mean, if you looked up the definition of gaslighting, you would find Anthony Fauci right now in it. And of course, you know, those types of actions of the rules that were handed down surrounding COVID resulted in a lot of real repercussions. For an example, restaurants were getting different occupancy ratings, entire event venues, everything else. They're getting different occupancy ratings of you can have 25%, 50%, 75%, 50%, 25%, 100%, 25%, and it would bounce all around to these different percentages. You know, that wasn't based upon anything at all, right? And that was based upon, well, some of it was based upon the 6-foot distancing guidelines that they claimed. Of course, they come out and said, well, we just kind of made that up. Masking, they're like, we kind of made it up. I mean, let's not forget that actual businesses got cited and paid fines in Kentucky based upon masking mandates. I mean, I got several citations for masking mandates. Now, they got dismissed the moment that we said, well, we want to take this to a trial jury, because they issued a fine and we said, we're not going to pay it. We're going to go to a trial jury instead. And so they went ahead and said, well, never mind. I actually don't think we want to pursue this citation. You just need to mask up, right? I mean, I had health department inspectors inside my coffee shop literally trying to tackle somebody playing the defensive line like they're J.J. Watt playing for the Texans, standing there ready for somebody to come in without a mask, ready to take them down. I'm ready to get them. I'm dead serious. I have it on camera. It's hilarious. And it's all this craziness happens. Fauci comes out and says, I kind of made it up. And now during, of course, the COVID mandates here in Kentucky, Beshear was issuing all these mandates. And there was a constitutional challenge to them. And they were ruled that Andy Beshear did have the authority under Rule 39A to issue those mandates. What the Constitution says is that the ability to suspend laws, which is what the governor is doing, he was suspending laws and then issuing edicts, mandates, relies solely with that of the legislature, but they can hand that power and delegate it out to other people. And back in the 90s, our state legislature had decided to go ahead and delegate those powers out to the governor. Now, after Beshear came in and made his actions, they made some changes. One of the big ones being is that now if you want a state of emergency to last longer than 30 days, you have to call the legislature into session to make a decision on extending that or not. That's a big change. Otherwise, Beshear is able to keep the state of emergency going indefinitely and issue whatever edicts he wanted to, because that's what the laws passed by our legislature said he could do. So in our state constitution, and it's important to notate this because we had Dr. Stack, who's like the Fauci of Kentucky. He was the person advising Beshear on what mandates to put in place. And when the court cases were going on over whether or not it was constitutional or not for Bashir to come in. One of the things that happened when Dr. Stack was being deposed by Chris Weiss, he admitted, because Chris Weiss had asked him, how are you all deciding what you're deciding? How are you deciding these percentages? How are you deciding things like, remember there was a curfew? Like you couldn't stay out past 10 or something because, if you stayed out past 10, COVID would get you. Had to make it home by 10 or COVID would get you and you'd turn into a pumpkin. Like, remember those kinds of rules that went on, right? Well, Fauci, Dr. Stack, Kentucky's Fauci, was being asked about this by Chris Weiss during the lockdowns. This was during the mandates, during COVID, and he admitted that they were just picking and choosing. And now you have Fauci admitting they were picking and choosing. Now let me read to you Section 2 of the Kentucky Constitution. Here it goes. Absolute and arbitrary power over the lives, liberty, and property of free men exists nowhere in a republic, not even in the largest majority. I'm going to say that one more time. Absolute and arbitrary power. Arbitrary. How are they picking what percentages restaurants could have? Arbitrary. How are they deciding what time the curfew was? Arbitrary. How are they deciding what distance you had to stand apart? Arbitrary. How were they deciding whether or not you had to wear a mask? It was all arbitrary. They even admit it. They're making it up as they went along. Fauci maybe wasn't at the time, but even Dr. Stack implied it. People wonder, how did Cooperrider over at Brood get it right? How did all the assertions that he made during the lockdowns and mandates when he was fighting for the survival of his business, how did they get it right? Well, all the experts got it wrong. And it's because they're making it up as they went along. And it would have been clear to anybody paying half attention to whether or not they were making it up as they went, because you would be looking around seeing that 25%. Where was there a study done saying if you have 26% of people in your restaurant, that would really affect things? And to remind you the kind of hurt that does to restaurants. I mean, if you're a small town, so I had a small town restaurant in Wilmore that COVID actually shut down. It's called Dean's Diner. And during the lockdowns, we actually were doing pretty good because we were the only restaurant in town that delivered. We started doing delivery, only restaurant in town that delivered. And so people were stuck at home now in Wilmore because they couldn't go into work because they're, Wilmore's kind of a bedroom community. People either work in Nicholasville or Lexington or, some other place, Versailles, Frankfurt, some other place. They don't really work in Wilmore. And so us offering delivery was fantastic. It's a boom for the business. But then when everything opened back up, but the restaurants were relegated to 25%, that was a small place. So our delivery went away. We only had 10 tables in our business to begin with, around about 10 or so tables. And so when they come in and they do 25%, you need to set 25% occupancy. Well, your people, you have to be 6 feet apart, and you're in a small restaurant, and the 6 feet apart was arbitrarily chosen by the CDC, mind you. Well, that limited us down to like 3-4 tables. And a restaurant cannot survive off 3 or 4 tables, so we had to shut it down. As Fauci's sitting up there, I mean, it's laughable. It's funny. It's hilarious to me. There should be a parody made of that song, Wasn't Me, by Sean John or whatever his name is, where he's like, I caught me red-handed. Just deny it was you. Wasn't me. She caught me on camera. Wasn't me. Fauci over here. Who made up 6 feet? Wasn't me. Where did it show up from? Who put that rule in place? Who suggested that? Wasn't me. But we have you red-handed. I don't know. Wasn't me. I mean, that's what it is. And it's funny, it's hilarious, but at the same time, you're literally listening to somebody who shut down a restaurant, lost a restaurant, because of an arbitrary and made up 6-foot rule. It was made up. I couldn't put enough people in there to pay the place's bills and pay the college students that were working there from Asbury. I couldn't put enough butts in the seats there Because Anthony Fauci made it up. Talks about absolute and arbitrary power over lives and the state constitution. Lives, liberty, and property. Seems like that was a whole lot of that was going on. But we didn't just stand there. No, I also had brewed, of course, in Lexington. A little bit bigger of a place. Also had a overhead there and an area to go out where you could sit on. So we were able to fit a little bit more people. We had a nice area there until the weather changed, of course. And lo and behold, when the weather changes, because of arbitrary reasons, a point that Andy Bashir made up, he decided to put in place another round of lockdowns, another round of people not being able to eat inside. I mean, it was arbitrary, of course. You could go to places that had a whole lot of garage doors overhead at the front of the building, and then they'd set up heaters, and then you sit at the back of the building where there's like no airflow going on at all. But it counted. They were allowed to do that. But I overapproved. I wasn't allowed to do it. I stayed open. Health department came in, told me to shut down, and I refused. And some court kerfuffles ensued. We'll be going over what happened and where the ruling sits. After this short break, you're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So, you heard my rant about Fauci and arbitrary power and how it violates Section 2 of the Kentucky Constitution. Well, recently, the Fayette Circuit Court, Judge Travis, has issued a ruling on a case that was before them. Let me explain this to you all real quick as how it deals with us. So during the second round of mandates, I refused to shut down my coffee shop in Lexington Brew. And so the state ABC board came in and revoked my license to sell. I was selling beer by the bottle there at the time. They revoked the license. And so we filed a emergency hearing to be able to get that license back in that location while the action pended. And they gave back our license to sell beer while this was pending in courts at Brew. Well, fast forward a bit, and what's important to notate is that the legislature shortly afterwards, in November was when they took away the license, the legislature shortly afterwards passed a lot of laws, some of them dealing with COVID mandates. One of them was House Bill 1, which sets what the COVID rules are for when you can and can't, when a business, when a restaurant is actually in violation of mandates or not, whose mandates they have to follow, which rules they have to follow, etc., etc. And I was actually in compliance with House Bill 1. And what the ABC decided to do is they went ahead and they held an administrative hearing to permanently decide to take away my license after the emergency injunction. And at that hearing, the administrative judge ruled that while they were okay to take my license initially, they are not allowed to continue to take my license. They need to give it back to me because, it's been handled. Give them their license back. Well, the ABC board decided to not listen to that administrative judge and went ahead and revoked my license. Anyways, we appealed it. While the appeal was going on, we could still hold on to our beer license. Well, the lease at my coffee shop Brewed was coming to an end, and it was going up about $2,000 to $3,000 in rent a month. Long story, but it was going up about $2,000 to $3,000 a month in rent. So obviously, we couldn't afford to operate there under our current business model. Not wanting to leave the location, I attempted to go ahead and up the liquor license at that location from a beer license to a poured liquor license. This was something that we always thought we may want to do. It was already made sure it was plainly laid out in our lease that we could sell poured liquor there. It was a nice place, set up good for it. Would have been a great bourbon bar. But anyways, I went as far as to even call Coke out to talk about getting a speed well put in and a lot of other things. And so we applied for the license with the state, and the state came back and said it is our policy that while individuals are in court with us, we do not issue a new license. And so therefore, we're denying your application for a license. So they wouldn't issue it to us. So we had to move locations. So we say, well, they won't issue us the up license, we'll move locations. So we are forced to move locations and we try to get our license for there, and we're told by Lexington ABC and ABC in general that you got denied here, you're not going to get approved for a license at your new location. And this is a fact that was confirmed. This is not up for debate. That is what they said. In fact, we had a hearing a few months ago where the judge specifically asked, will you issue him a new license now? And they said, no, we will not issue him any license anywhere. They said that in court already. And so the fact that they wouldn't issue me a new license at a new location meant that we couldn't operate at this new location. And there's some trolls out there that seem to be confused on why a person needs to be able to sell alcohol to afford to operate it as a non-to-go, non-drive-through restaurant, and it's because they're an idiot. I mean, it's just, fact of the matter is that rent's high. You got to pay for that. You got to pay for the cost of labor. You got to pay for the cost of a lot of these things. And if you want to operate later than, 1, 2 o'clock, and you also want people to buy multiple things from you, you got to sell them something to buy multiple things of, and food doesn't necessarily cut it. And so that's why, of course, we want to sell poured liquor. We want to sell, well drinks and other cocktails and things like that. And so we weren't able to operate. But yet, ABC tried to get it dismissed in front of the judge. This was a few months ago. The judge said, in no way, shape, or form am I dismissing this case. It is not mute. You won't issue him a license now. I'm going to rule on whether or not you should give his license back and whether you should have permanently took it in the first place. And Judge Travis there did rule, and his ruling is that ABC acted in violation of the law by continuing to hold on to my license. So when they first took my license, they said that was okay. You were just following the rules, right? But that you cannot continue to go ahead and take his license. He actually said no matter how much the state ABC board wants to call Cooperrider a bad actor, that's what they called me, a bad actor, and no matter how flagrant I was in my violations, the law had changed, House Bill 1 had passed, and at the time they were deciding whether or not to permanently remove my license, they should have taken that into an account, and they didn't. And so now, what they were told they had to do, because they worked against the law, is go back and go ahead and decide and have a new hearing, a new decision-making process with coordinates and seeing if I followed House Bill 1 that passed in 2021, if I followed that law, and if I deserve to have my license permanently removed. If I was in compliance with that law, I don't. And they're going to have a hard time because I was in compliance with that law. And the judge goes on to point out, guys, we're not talking about somebody serving to minors too. He goes on to point out that there's nothing that Cooperrider did that indicates he would continue to have issues with an alcohol license in the future. He wasn't pulled for serving to minors. He wasn't pulled for violating state liquor laws. It was pulled over COVID mandate. There's not necessarily an obvious reason to see that he would violate ABC law in the future or alcohol laws in the future here in the state of Kentucky. They're going to have another problem to overcome because in 2021 as well, our legislature passed a law stating, it was in our revenue bill or in our spending bill, that Governor Beshear cannot expend more than $5,000 enforcing COVID mandates. And he so far has expended way past that attempting to enforce COVID mandates just in my case alone. And so on those matters, as well as these matters, we took them to federal court because obviously these types of decision-making that has been erroneous and has been being done for one reason. Nobody else is getting this in the States. Being done for one reason, and that's because Andrew Cooperrider hurt little baby Beshear's feelings when he stood up to him. And, I stood up to him and I made him look like a fool. And so he couldn't keep in place his mandates anymore, keeping restaurants closed. And so he had to relent well before he wanted to. We know it's well before he wanted to because he claims it was all about the numbers. But yet, the day he rescinded his mandates, the COVID infection rate was literally higher than the day he put his mandates in place in the first place. We know he would have kept it going through Christmas if he could have, but he was forced to rescind it because people started standing up and saying enough was enough, and Beshear couldn't handle it anymore. The politicalness of it all was untenable, and so that's why he ended up having to give in, but that made him mad. And I became a political enemy, so he decided to go ahead and target me, while the judge saying, no, y'all got to follow the law here. Now, what remedies do we have? Well, obviously, if ABC decides to appeal the case or not, we'll decide whether or not we can go ahead and get a license. They do have to have the new hearing too as well, but it reads if everything holds true and they don't decide to go ahead and push forward that way, that we can go ahead and get an alcohol license. And understand this, not being able to get an alcohol license has meant that I couldn't operate anything to do with alcohol. So I couldn't own if I want to buy a concession stand and go to fairs and festivals selling beer or alcohol or things like that out of the concession stand, not allowed to do that. That isn't allowed to do. If I want to open up a supermarket selling beer or anything else, couldn't do that. Liquor store, couldn't do that. Bar, nope. Restaurant serves alcohol, nope. Can't do any of that. I haven't been able to do that for years. And now, if this holds, I could be free to do some of those items. But that doesn't stem from the fact that they caused damages, of course, that Brood had to be shut down because of their refusal to issue a license, and that still has yet to be remedied. We'll see what we can do on that front into the future, but this is a big step forward because it's given us a victory where twice now the administrative judge and now circuit court judge has ruled against the ABC board. We'll see if they decide to go ahead and take that forward into the state or the appellate court. And then the state Supreme Court. We'll see what process they decide to go ahead and take. Well, coming up after this, Adam Moore, the cultist is mad. We'll go over why after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So Adam Moore is running for State House in District 45. He's the Democrat running against one Thomas Jefferson, who beat Killian Timoney recently. And those of you who've listened to the show for a little length of time may recognize the name as the cult member running for office. If you head on over to theandrewshow.com, you hit the Listen Now tab, you'll see all the different places where you can listen to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Pull that up, then go ahead and click on Cultists Running for Office, I believe is what the episode name is, Cultists Running for Office. And I take a deep dive into Adam Moore and his religious beliefs and how convoluted they are, not to mention extremely culty. And I also made a post about it, of course, online, accompanied by a video of him reading, not scripture, of course, because they don't have a Bible there, but instead reading from one of their quote-unquote textbooks and a passage from it. You know, it's so funny, right? It's like a church. You show up on Sunday, they sing songs, they read a passage from a book, but it's not the Bible, and then they have small groups and all these other things. But what the church believes, according to their website, the Ahava Center in Lexington, according to their website, what they believe is that we are all a part of God. And if we align our minds through things like mind treatments, affirmative prayer, and trust circles, if we align ourselves, if we're able to align our minds with the universal mind, because we are a part of God, we're part of that universal mind, part of that great being, we can manifest our realities to be whatever we want them to be. And this is all from their website. This isn't me putting this into their mouth. This is what their website says. Place in question is very far to the left as far as all their beliefs go. The reverend is called Reverend Rainbow. Reverend Rainbow, very, very interesting individual. Reverend Rainbow. And so we have Adam Moore apparently listens to the show. How you doing, Adam? Listens to the show, saw it on Twitter, was very upset. And so he issued this press release. We'll go through it and I'll kind of break down what he's saying here. He says, in the era of divisive politics, we have a choice in how candidates should run their campaigns and how we make decisions at the ballot box. Do we reward those who throw political mud and spread lies that dehumanize our opponents in order to generate hate and fear in the hearts and minds of voters? I think we're better than that. I believe there's still place for hope in politics and our democracy, for electing someone because they are a good person with good ideas and real solutions for their constituents. Unfortunately, my opponent, Thomas Jefferson, and his political lieutenants disagree. They're fine acting as political thugs who will say and do anything to wield political power. They began smearing Representative Killian Timney with disgusting lie after disgusting lie. What did they call him? A groomer, a sexual predator. I may disagree with Representative Timney on a range of policy issues, but he's a man of honesty and decency. He's a family man, a man of faith. What Thomas Jefferson and his gang said and did in that campaign was shameful. Let's just pause there, okay? First off, Thomas Jefferson's campaign itself didn't say much. Everything he's saying about these thugs and whatever are all outside groups that legally aren't even allowed to coordinate with Thomas Jefferson. And understand this, they're just upset that they lost by like a lot too as well. Because he's sitting here saying that, oh, Killian Timney's a really decent, honest guy. Well, they're out there running mailers and attack ads saying that Thomas Jefferson's a far leftist Black Lives Matter activist because he owns stock in Amazon. I'm not kidding you. That was real attacks they ran. He then goes on to say, now Jefferson and his closest allies have begun a smear campaign aiming their filth at me, spreading a new deluge of lies that I'm in a radical religious cult because I chose to attend Ahava here in Lexington on most Sunday mornings. It is neither a religion, nor a cult. So on Sunday mornings, he goes to a I'm sorry, it's so funny. He goes to a spiritual wellness center every Sunday morning and then goes on to claim it's neither a religion nor a cult. Okay. He'll go on to talk about what they do at this church. But I want you to keep in mind that he's trying to argue that this place he goes every Sunday, sings in the band, stands up and reads from a book, and then has a Reverend Rainbow. The leader is called Reverend Rainbow. He wants to claim this isn't a church. Oh, God, he thinks you're idiots. Anyways, here's the truth. I'm sorry. I need to contain myself. Here's the truth. I was born and raised, reading now, of course, from the press release. Here's the truth. I was born and raised Southern Baptist and accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior when I was 13 years old. And to this day, I'm still a member of that church in Grafenberg, Kentucky, where I grew up. There, you just lost all the Southern Baptist people, because there's not a single devout Southern Baptist person out there, not even devout, just Southern Baptist person out there who reads that and says, okay, so you're a Southern Baptist who never moved your church membership and doesn't even attend a Christian church every Sunday. I don't think you're a real big Southern Baptist. But anyways, now living with my family in Lexington, I choose to go to Ahava, a center that welcomes diverse people of all faiths and religions, including a Southern Baptist like myself. Its purpose is to provide spiritual tools to empower personal growth so that any of us can live a life more aligned with God, how a Christian can be more Christ-like. The place, spiritual tools, it provides you spiritual tools that don't involve the Bible, mind you, that don't involve the Bible. How are you becoming more Christian and more Christ-like by going to a church every Sunday that doesn't read from the Holy Bible every Sunday, but instead have you stand up and read from a book? What I aired, go back and listen on Friday's episode, last Friday, I think, Cultists Running for Office, and I played it. But as you go up there and stand and read about how if you sit in the circle in the woods, a shy soul will show up and build a force field around you. That sounds a lot like Jesus, doesn't it? It sounds so much like Jesus and Christ. That sounds exactly like the Christianity I've heard of in the past. That sounds like a place teaching you to be more Christ-like. Don't disparage your actual Christian faith, if you have any, Adam, and the rest of us Christians by pretending that what you're doing there, that is not biblical, it isn't in the Bible, they don't mention Jesus as your Lord and Savior, as a physical person that died on the cross for you, as the one true, honest truth. They don't believe that. They don't preach that. Don't pretend that by attending that, you're somehow being a good Christian. It's disrespectful to our intelligence, and most importantly, disrespectful to the faith you claim you actually are, which is Christian. We continue. I don't believe that seeking to live a life more attuned with God is radical. I don't believe that accepting others of different faiths is radical. I've lived in a life grounded in faith that represents everyone and all beliefs. You believe in nothing. If your faith says everybody's right, he goes on to say, I love Kentucky, I love this country, and I've done 2 tours overseas in the defense of people of all manner of religious backgrounds at my side. Adam, thank you for your service. One of those tours was a year spent in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban. The Taliban who targeted me with rifles, grenades, and IEDs wasn't defined by their being Afghan or Pakistani. They weren't defined by being Muslim. They weren't defined by speaking Pashto. They were defined by religious extremism and intolerance, an unwillingness to accept anyone of a different belief, and a justification to kill for them. I didn't fight for freedom in Afghanistan to come home and have to face a new breed of extremism in America. But we are here. If my opponent wants to have a discussion about faith and religion in an open way, then let's have that conversation. But if Thomas Jefferson and his gang want to act like a political thugs, if they want to fight, we'll give them one. Their lies smearing my character is beyond pale. They're trying to do to me now exactly what they did to Representative Timoney in the primary, and it's a disgrace. Let me be really honest with you. First, Thomas Jefferson has no idea about anything that's going on. Nobody's his lieutenants. Nobody's in his gang. He's not a gang leader. I happen to have seen Thomas Jefferson this last Saturday at an event. He was unaware that Adam Moore was in a cult. But he goes after Thomas Jefferson as if he's somehow tied to it, like a liar. Then goes on to say we're smearing him. Doesn't provide any evidence that he's doing it. And then, in case you missed it, he compared conservatives and Republicans and people who said, hey, I don't know if I want to elect somebody who's in a cult. The exact same religious extremists as the Taliban. So he believes that people who don't want to vote for occultists because they just don't align with their values are the exact same as the Taliban. That's a real good way to win over voters, isn't it? Remember, he said, I don't want to cause divisiveness. You literally just called every single Republican in a majority Republican district the Taliban. Real extreme. Well, y'all, that's what we have time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. We'll be back here tomorrow.